Hello everyone and welcome to the video on Catholic ideas in business ethics. In this session, we are focusing on the insights of St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the most influential figures in Christian philosophy and theology. This video will give you the background and framing to help you engage with the readings from the Summa Theologiae and the video you've been assigned for Aquinas' moral framework. So let's take a look at the foundational moral structure, the three fonts of morality. The first font is the intention, which refers to why you are doing what you're doing. What is your goal and purpose? And in the context of Catholic ethics, your intention should align you with the highest moral value of a Christian. And as a Christian, the goal is to be Christ-like in your behavior. That is the aim of the moral life, to orient yourself towards eternal flourishing, not just short-term gains. The object of an action is what you're actually doing. It is the act itself. And we can think of this as the specific choice that you're making within your hierarchy of values. It sits beneath your intention and must align with it. Aquinas says that some objects, like murder, adultery, and theft, are never permissible no matter the intention. And that's because these are outside of the moral limits for Christianity. If your chosen action contradicts the moral order, then your whole act fails, morally speaking. And finally, we have the circumstance. That is the context in which everything takes place. That includes the time, place, and other variables. Circumstances can change how we evaluate the severity or prudence of an action, but what it can't do is turn an evil act into a good one. Now, think about a time when your goal was good, like helping someone, but your method didn't quite match up. What went wrong? Well, maybe you meant to help your friend by covering for them at work or something, but in doing so, you lied to their boss. The intention was good, but the object, lying in this case, isn't compatible with your higher moral goals. That's the kind of misalignment that Aquinas wants us to avoid. Now, one of Aquinas' important points throughout the readings is that morality is not the same thing as legality. Just because something is legal doesn't make it moral. And justice, in Aquinas' thought, is higher than law. His ethics emphasize that the material world is fallen, temporary and imperfect, and so our actions need to reflect spiritual integrity, not just legal compliance. At the heart of his thinking is a simple principle: love thy neighbor as thyself. And that means treating others as equals, not just in word, but in your economic and social interactions. Now, can you think of something that may be legal to do in business, but you still feel might be morally questionable? A classic example is exploiting legal loopholes to avoid paying taxes or to cut wages. It might be legal on paper, but it doesn't reflect fairness or neighborly love, and that's where Aquinas' framework applies. And this brings us to Aquinas' view of trade. Now, he does not say that trade itself is evil, but he does warn us that the desire for profit can easily become disordered. And what he means by profit, by the way, is not the money that you use to cover costs, including salaries, future investments, and so on, but the extra surplus gained purely for the sake of the gain. So that is money beyond what is needed to sustain yourself and the business. And he emphasizes that trade must be fair, and by that he means beneficial to both the buyer and the seller. And you can think of fairness this way: if both people had the exact same knowledge, would they still agree to the exchange? Now, if somebody's trying to sell me a lemon car, they themselves would not buy that car because of what they know about it. And so Aquinas would say then they shouldn't sell it that way. And if I, as a buyer, know that what I'm buying is far more valuable than what the seller understands, if I was in the seller's shoes, I would want to know, and then I wouldn't want to let it go way below a reasonable price. Now, would you feel comfortable selling something if the customer only agreed because they didn't know what you knew? Probably not. If you knew the product had a flaw or that you were charging far more than it was worth, you might feel guilty. And Aquinas would say that guilt is your moral intuition telling you that something is off. And Aquinas gives you a language to understand it. Now, let's take a look at how exactly fair trade would work with a particular example. Let's say you run a small business selling shirts. Your supplier charges you $5 a shirt, and you want to earn a $60,000 annual salary, which breaks down to about $30 an hour, assuming about 2,000 working hours per year. Your overhead, that's your rent, electricity, internet, and all the rest of that, comes out to about $1,000 a month, or $12,000 a year. Spread over your working hours, that's about $6 per hour. And you can also expect to sell about 6 shirts per hour. So let's break that down. Material cost per shirt is $5. The labor cost per shirt for your salary is $5. The overhead cost per shirt is $1. And let's say we build in a buffer for incidentals, like if we happen not to sell as many shirts during this hour as we did during others, or some repairs come up or something, we'll add in another $1. And that brings us to a fair price of $12 per shirt. Now notice everybody in the entire supply chain has already been paid, including yourself, and you have an extra $1 left over in case things go bad at some later point. Now, based on this model, what happens if you start charging $20 or $30 per shirt, even though nothing else changed? Well, if your only justification is that you can get away with it, that puts you in ethically dangerous territory. Aquinas would say that you're no longer charging a fair price, you are exploiting your customers' lack of knowledge or their need. So, here's the big picture. Aquinas calls us to aim at the good, which ultimately for him is God, by structuring our intentions, actions, and context around justice. He reminds us that morality is not about maximizing wealth, but about maintaining dignity, fairness, and spiritual integrity. And in the marketplace, fairness isn't just a suggestion. It is a moral obligation rooted in the fundamental command, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, we are covering Aquinas' views on interest and usury not in this video, but we will cover it after we have covered the Islamic business ethics section, because both St. Aquinas and Al-Ghazali take pretty similar approaches to that topic, and so it makes more sense to explore them side by side.